All right, so welcome everyone. We're excited to have you join us here for Career Day 2023. My name is Peter Bartel, and I'm a Career Services team member here at SNHU. I'm here today to introduce our incredible presenters and discuss our session guidelines. After that, we'll spend about 45 minutes addressing any of your career-related questions. We'll get started. And before we do, there's a few important announcements here, and we'll go through them now. So this session is being recorded, and there is no obligation to have your camera on or to use the chat to participate in this session. You can turn on captions for this session, as mentioned, but by selecting the More button at the top of your team screen and selecting Turn on Live Captions from the drop-down menu. Your microphone will remain muted today to reduce background noise, but the chat will be available throughout the session, and we encourage you to share your questions and reflect. We do ask you to be kind and refrain from using any inappropriate language or sharing any offensive content. We are all here and engage with this community and appreciate your cooperation for sure. Do not photograph, screenshot, or record anyone in attendance. And then also presentation slides may contain clickable links. For those viewing this presentation on a mobile device, we will include the links in the chat as well, so that you'll be able to retrieve them at the end without being taken out of the session. Also, you will see that Teams offers helpful presentation options, like changing the written language of the slides and the opportunity to move through the slides at your own pace. So if you move the slides and wish to get back to the slide currently being discussed, all you have to do is select the red box that says Sync to Presenter. And this won't impact anybody else's viewing experience but your own, so that's a good thing. And also please save any questions until the official Q&A, and we'll move on to the access and accommodations. And I'll read this to you all. I'd like to share SNHU's access and accommodations information, which serves as a reminder of resources available for our community members. Your experience here at Southern New Hampshire University is important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this presentation's design or delivery that presents barriers to accessibility, please notify the appropriate department. For online students, please connect with the Online Accessibility Center by emailing oac@snhu.edu or by phone at 866-305-9430. For campus students, please contact the Campus Accessibility Center by emailing cac@snhu.edu or by phone at 603-644-3118. For staff and faculty, please contact the Human Resources Office by emailing hr@snhu.edu. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the presenters here, and then we'll get started with our Ask Us Anything presentation. I see a lot going on through the chat. Keep introducing yourselves. That's great. Your program, where you're from. If you want to share your LinkedIn for networking purposes, feel free to do so. I'll provide an introduction here to each of the panelists. So Kathy Montanarella is a career advisor with many years of experience supporting students in business programs. So Kathy's here today. Emma Delanoy as well is a team lead in the career space with a background supporting social science students. Jen Vincent is also here, and she's a career advisor who specializes in supporting our healthcare students. And finally, Briar Mosley is a career advisor who also supports students in our business programs. Feel free to get your questions ready. But first, I believe Emma will take us through a couple slides that will provide an overview of the department. So without further ado, I'll pass the mic over to the presenters.
Thank you, Peter. Yes, so before we dive in, we appreciate you being patient with your questions, but we really wanted to introduce ourselves as SNHU Career Services a little bit more and give you a brief overview. So students and alumni at SNHU have access to free career services. So what this includes, if you've never spoken with us before and are interested, so this is career events, that are offered both in person and virtually, where you can interact with employers, recruiters, and other SNHU learners to network and learn more about careers in different industries. Interview preparation, where you can practice and discuss tips and best practices to give your best interview. Professional document review, where career representatives will review and provide feedback and coaching for different documents such as cover letters, resumes, portfolios, LinkedIn profiles, CVs, and much more. We have our employer and alumni relations. So this typically through our awesome platform Handshake, where you can network and connect, learn more about employers and job opportunities there. And then career advising. So you can work with a career advisor or internship administrator to explore your interests and receive one-on-one coaching, career assessments, career planning, and other resources and tips. And while we do not provide job placement, we are here to support you in reaching your career and professional goals, career advancement, or even if you just are here joining us for special interest and want to learn more about your options and how to talk about your degree too. So we have self-service resources available to students and alumni through the My SNHU portal. You just log in, go to the main menu by selecting that hamburger icon at the top left-hand corner of the screen and selecting Career Services below. You can access Away To there, which is our career assessment tool. Skills First, which is our resume builder and has some overall career resources available there. And then also explore different career pathways and information by program and degree focus. And then here you'll see another great resource we wanted to highlight, which is through our Shapiro Library. So the Shapiro Library has a lot of fantastic resources available, but specifically you can find them in some career resources available to you, which have some really great post-grad resources as well. So again, through your My SNHU portal, or if you have the Shapiro Library bookmarked, go to the Shapiro Library page, more services, and toggle to career resources right at the bottom of that menu. And then finally, we want to highlight Handshake. So as I said earlier, this is a job search platform that also allows you to network and connect with students and alumni at SNHU. But it also has access to other schools and universities across the country who utilize this platform as well. So our SNHU employer relations team, they help to connect with employers who are excited to work with SNHU alumni and students. You can find out some great information and insight to these employers through the pages on Handshake and during the career events, just like Career Day today. You can detail your job search by specific filters, such as remote jobs, or you can search for your internship opportunities. You can search by location, anything like that. And again, our career advisors, internship administrators are here to help you with navigating this platform, or if you have questions on it too. Now that's enough for me. Let's open up our Q&A so you can ask us anything.
Hey, Emma, I saw one initial question and team come through the chat from Juan. He said, IT is an extensive field. How do I narrow it down?
Great question, Juan. So I guess I can kick this off, Juan, here. So IT, really looking at what specific area do you want to focus in? What interests you about IT? So typically I explain the difference between computer science or our IT degrees. IT is about or computer science is about creating technology. So that's the framework, the basis, writing, programming, creating the technology on that end. And information technology is more about explaining and making connections with that technology. So it's taking that created technology and putting it to use, whether that's through businesses, platforms, networks, the like. So figuring out how you want to work within IT and how extensive it is. And if anyone else wants to add to that.
Looks like you've got some additional questions in the chat. I'm currently in retail and looking to enter accounting. How do I leverage my experience in retail to a more financial angle on my resume?
Let me take a chance at responding to that question. I work with many students who are in retail and are interested in transitioning either into an accounting or finance role. So I think it really pertains to two things. Think about your transferable skills in managing cash flow, and whether that's doing in reconciling bank deposits before you make those deposits daily, organizing schedules and standard procedures in training your team. Also looking at managing refunds, looking at upselling and monitoring the effectiveness of some of your upselling or merchandising initiatives, anything that is quantitative, analytical, and very detail oriented with a numbers orientation. Those are highly valued transferable skills as you transition into the accounting field. Another perspective in that is to look at any reports that you're monitoring for daily sales and adjusting your actions using those analytical skills provided by analyzing data that you're using. Any of those skills are helpful stepping stones as you transition into an accounting or finance capacity. Would anybody else on the panel have anything to add? Please feel free.
I think that was great, Kathy. Very helpful head start. And again, if you want further information, you can definitely feel free to connect with us today. Any one of our career advisors would be happy to discuss your questions in more depth too. But we have a lot of great questions coming through. So I am going to move on to the next one that came in from Ernst. I see here, where is it best to find remote job with graduation right around the corner?
This is an especially pertinent question post-pandemic. I have seen employers perceive work and how work is accomplished and where work is accomplished with a broader view than pre-pandemic timeframe. Keep in mind, there's three types of jobs. There's traditional jobs on site. There's hybrid jobs, which might be 2 days on site, 3 days telecommuting from home, and then fully remote opportunities. There are several highly effective websites looking for remote roles. First of all, keep in mind Handshake has a remote filter that you can use. Looking for fully remote roles. Flex Jobs is another one. Side Gigs is another website, some that many students have found very helpful. Anyone else like to chime in?
I would, Kathy. The really great point of saying that there's these filter tools on like Handshake, LinkedIn, Indeed, they all have these types of filters. Two things I like to kind of bring up whenever I get that question of like, where can I find remote jobs, is know that currently remote jobs are looking pretty competitive from the information that we're getting. Like 15% of jobs on LinkedIn are remote, but they get about 50% of the resumes that go out on LinkedIn. So know that they're really competitive, and it helps to have that remote experience. And a lot of the time students call in and think they have no remote experience, but all of you or nearly all of you have remote experience in your education. You know, you did remote schooling. So that's definitely a a place to kind of leverage that experience to show that you do have remote experience, you can telecommunicate into those positions, and it can be really helpful in getting into that really competitive space right now.
Good point. I'll also like to add, don't forget to leverage your social media platforms. You can go on IG, Twitter, Facebook, and search the hashtag remote work as well too.
I wouldn't hesitate to keep your eyes on professional associations. They typically have a career page, and I am seeing hybrid and remote jobs posted across many different disciplines.
I see Joseph has his hand raised, and I love the use of that feature. Joseph, did you have a specific question for us? Your mic should be allowed if you want to chime in. Oh, you're muted. Sorry, Joseph. Can you see the mute option?
I do see another question, Joseph, while you try to resolve your sound issue. Makila asked, how can I apply for a job within my field if they all require experience? This is a common question that many students ask. The key focus in my mind, in my opinion, is people and transferable skills. So think about transferable skills that you have, and definitely talking with one of our career advisors can help flesh that out. Think about the transferable skills that a new targeted field you're applying for requires. So for example, problem resolution and de-escalation of issues with customers. That's strong interpersonal, strong communication, and thinking on your feet skills that are very valuable and transferable in many lines of work. The other thing I would say is informational interviews are really helpful. Could someone else on the panel maybe speak to informational interviews?
Sure, I can, Kathy. Informational interviews are pretty simple. And we have resources that kind of help you with navigate this space too. Informational interviews are when you're kind of reaching out to someone that you kind of see yourself in that position, maybe in the short term, in a couple years, or maybe they have experience in something that you're interested in, and it's really just kind of reaching out and asking them a few questions, setting up a time to ask these questions. And in this information interview, you're not so much asking for a job, so you want to be asking like, hey, can you get me the in here, or what who do you know? It's really asking the details of that person's like day, like how are they navigating the space, like what do they like about their job, what they don't like about their job, to see if it would be a good fit for you. Instead of just kind of looking at job posting, it gets you a little better insight from seeing and talking to someone who's already at the company you see yourself in, or maybe was already in the position you could see yourself in. And then when you wrap that interview up, you could leave it at, well, if anything comes up, I'm super interested, keep me in mind, but it's definitely not something that you want to utilize as asking for a job, but getting insight into a space that maybe you're not 100% familiar with. Does that make sense?
It's learning through other people that are wearing the shoes that you hope to wear someday in a non-threatening way. You're just broadening your network and learning through other people's experiences. And we have all been rookies at one point in our career and asked other people for help. So please don't hesitate to do that. I see an interesting question from Dixania about completing the IT Health Informatics program, and what would be some job titles that align with that?
Good question. I also replied back with an AHIMA map, which is the American Health Information Management Association, with a career map, which actually breaks down the healthcare informatics field with some cool job titles. We'll give you the skills that's also required for that job, what the outlook is. So take a look at that map, and it should give you a very good plethora of job titles that you can explore within the healthcare informatics field. I'll go ahead and post it again because I'm pretty sure it's way up there now.
That sounds great. I see Kathleen asked a question also about how would you describe a Master of Science management degree?
So I'd say, Kathleen, I think as far as how would you best describe it, it really depends on what is your goal? What are you going for? And that's the beauty of being able to take parts of what you've learned in your academic experience to help market yourself towards the roles you are applying for. So you can describe your Master of Science or Master of Science in Management degree. I mean, we have the explanation, the outcomes, the objectives. You could use pieces of that to help with your explanation. But if there's a specific management role or industry, think of what are the skills that you've learned that will make you the strongest candidate and strongest person for the role that you are looking at. And that's how I would say would best describe it, because many people can have a Master of Science in Management, but they might be doing slightly different things, and it's about how you market yourself for it.
I think management also takes many different forms. It could be managing people, managing programs, managing initiatives, managing community events in your volunteer work. So I think anything that involves leading or participating in meaningful work encompasses some of the principles that you learn in that program. Tim, I see that you asked an interesting question about if I've never had a job, how do I put on a resume under the work experience? Work takes many forms. It can encompass volunteer work at your child's school. It can be volunteer work through an organization in your community. It could take many different forms. So I think emphasizing the skills that you use, whether, for example, if you're a stay-at-home parent and you're involved in some school initiatives for fundraising, for raising resources for a new playground or a new library, those involve many transferable skills that employers would value. So I think work takes many forms. I would also talk about other online initiatives that you've been involved in. Anyone else have any ideas on that? Job shadowing is a good idea as well. You can learn by job shadowing people in a line of work that you're interested in, or just talking with them over the phone and asking some good probing questions about what a typical day is like, what projects are they working on, what skills are they using, and then you can talk perhaps in an interview about learning by talking to other professionals in that line of work.
Haley asked a good question, networking tips for introverts. So Haley, I identify as an introvert myself. So say if I'm going on a career event or career fair, I make it a point to have a solid goal in place. So my goal, for example, would be to meet and introduce myself to at least 3 people. So having that goal, knowing that I cannot leave until I have done that, has helped. Another tip is to possibly use your social media platforms again. You could post your resume on there, ask for connections. That way, always go to your network, your pull people first. Another thing that I actually do is to get an introduction from someone that's already within my network, because it's a little bit easier to market yourself that way if you're going through someone that you already know. And I also will challenge you, don't forget to take breaks afterwards when you're in those career events, because sometimes it can be a little bit draining on an introvert once they've actually made those connections with people. So take breaks in order to reset yourself and center yourself and then go back at it.
Another quick tip that I love is have great questions prepared. sometimes networking doesn't mean that you always have to talk about yourself. It's engaging and connecting with others and creating a relationship. And you can do that by asking others about themselves to a point where they'll still remember you, remember the great questions that you ask, but it allows you to not have to talk as much during those types of events. Right. I'm seeing there's a lot of great questions, so I apologize if we do miss any, but I'm seeing this is an interesting one, and I'm not sure if it was answered in the chat, so if it was, we can move forward. But for those who are returning as older students, should we highlight or downplay that we are not younger or traditional students? And there was another similar question of that too, of the advantages or disadvantages of someone who might be an older student or have experience versus someone coming out of high school or traditional age.
I think if you approach this question from an employer's perspective, what does an employer want? They want somebody who is eager to learn, dedicated and reliable, will assimilate quickly into the existing team with ease, and bring some new knowledge and data. And I think that's irregardless of age. So I think if you have experience in your prior work roles that are relevant to your job target, I would include it, and maybe we don't include the dates on your resume because we want to avoid any age discrimination risk. If you have done something in your past, like my first job was working in a grocery store in high school, is that relevant to career advising? Maybe, because I learned how to de-escalate hot situations as people came through the line and we didn't have on the shelf what they needed. So would I include that? Probably not now, but have I refined those skills as I've moved forward in my career in different lines of work? Absolutely. So I think everybody brings strengths to the table, and the employer is looking for a problem solver, a positive presence at work, somebody who will share some of their new knowledge, and somebody who brings a positive attitude ready to go. Any other thoughts from the panel on that?
I think that was great, Kathy. And we'll go to the next one. So again, how do I determine what I really want to do with my degree? This person asked their specific degree with business administration, concentration, human resource management, but we'll leave this open to how do you really determine, or how do you determine what you want to do with any degree you're in? Any good tips?
I think start with where you're planted right now and do some soul searching about what parts of your current job do you love, what parts of your current job do you tolerate, and what parts of your current job do you hate and you never want to duplicate. And that's a good starting point in terms of self-reflection on where you want to move forward in. There are lots of different pathways, for example, in HR. Some are people-facing, some are data-facing. Some are specialist roles, some are more generalist roles. So I think by talking with a career advisor, you can kind of flesh out which types of opportunities look interesting. And I think also looking at diverse HR opportunities and seeing which job description looks interesting to you and you can envision yourself in that role is a good starting point.
Awesome. And if you don't have current work experience or previous work experience to pull from, determining what you really want to do, think of what are the skills that you enjoy and would want to utilize daily. Are you a problem solver? Are you a critical thinker? Are you a researcher? Are you good at decision making? Are those the things that you want to tap into daily? Because you could develop some conclusions based on just your interests and your skills. And that's what our Away To assessment looks at. It's an interest profiler, which is really cool. So you can just really look at what are you interested in and give you some options based on that. Okay, anyone else see any other good questions that haven't been tackled by our awesome chat and career services people in the chat helping us out today? Ooh, what is the best way to match my education with job requirements?
I think paying attention to job requirements, preferred versus required. So required is usually the standard of entry, preferred is frosting on the cake. It's what you bring to the table that might be more. Now, if you have relevant experience in the workforce, that definitely can be considered for in lieu of an advanced degree. If they say they prefer a master's degree, you have a bachelor's plus 10 years of experience, that master's degree might not be as valued because you have practical experience to bring to the table. I also think if you see an opportunity that looks interesting and you're able to reach out to the recruiter at that organization and say, here's a summary of my background, here's credential-wise where I am, could I be a viable candidate and be considered for this role? You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. I think too, when you look at a job posting, if you have 70% of what's on the job posting, I say go for it. You have everything to gain and nothing to lose. Many times organizations hang on to resumes for future needs. They go into a database and you might be called for a similar role that may require a different credential. I hope that's helpful.
And don't forget to utilize the coursework. You could add that to your education section. You can put related coursework to show that you, especially for students who have less than a year experience, I recommend adding those coursework. And it can also help you with beating applicant tracking systems. So say, for example, I work with healthcare students and they need someone who is familiar with medical terminology. If they never had a job in the field, but they've actually had a coursework in medical terminology, I recommend them to add that there. So it kind of works for twofold. It kind of works as experience, but also to help beat the applicant tracking system.
Or any projects you've worked on are great to discuss as well.
True.
Excellent idea.
Awesome. So we'll move on. There's two questions back to back that are kind of semi-related here too. So someone who is looking for an internship, how would you go about that when you already work full-time, plus you're a student, plus your busy schedule, family, other responsibilities? So how do you gain experience or look for an internship when you have all that going on? Same with someone who's about to graduate and they're looking to gain some more experience to put on their resume before they start applying. Anyone have any ideas for how either of these learners could go about that? I guess I'll chime in with my ideas here so for the internship, sometimes internship, you could find a formal one. And again, you can use Handshake or other internship or job search platforms to find that or find a local agency or employer to do one through. But again, if you're busy, you're really looking at gaining experience. Those are sometimes things that you can do with additional certifications, or there's so many great virtual opportunities now, or experiential learning opportunities too, which could give you the experience and skills without needing to complete a full internship. Some degrees at SNHU do require you to have an internship, so I'd strongly suggest definitely making sure you look into that, speak with your academic advisor to confirm if it is required or not. If it's not required, then that's something where we could have a discussion to look at what would work best for you. Is a formal internship best for you when you have a lot going on, or is it trying to find the experience and build the skills in a different way? And that's something that we could look into. Same for those of you who are about to graduate. You don't have credits left to complete an internship or do an internship for credit, but you still want to build experience. So especially for our technical degrees, and even others, honestly, you can build skills through some really great platforms. I'm thinking like Udemy, edX. There's sometimes even free training. We also have LinkedIn Learning free for all of you. So there's access to LinkedIn Learning where you can do some really great training and exercises, and those can all be added to your resume, and we can discuss and help you with how you can market those on your resume and talk about them.
I have had students demonstrate their interest in a field by finding somebody who could be a mentor to them and connecting with that mentor on a regular basis, or even offering to job shadow them on a weekend for an hour or two so they can see some of the tools they're using, some of the projects they're working on. And it's just for a finite amount of time. It's not an internship that's, 8 hours full time, 3 days a week that could, that's unpaid. I'm sorry, somebody else had an idea on that?
No, actually, I was going to kind of mention what you were saying. And sometimes internships are not posted online, right? So sometimes it just helps to hit the pavement and cold call companies. You could ask to see if maybe you could do like off-hour work or contract or project-based work. So it doesn't necessarily have to fit like the 8 to 5 model. Sometimes just cold calling and just asking, hey, I'm willing to help out for free. Make your own opportunity.
Yeah, nonprofits are a helpful, fruitful garden to pluck as well, because nonprofits may have limited financial resources, but they definitely have needs, and sometimes headcount is sparse. So if you offer to work on somebody's website for them, what a great experience that you could add to your resume. You may not get paid for it, but it might be flexible when you get it accomplished. So it works for you because you don't have the rigor of having to be there a certain period of time, but you can get it done during your free time and then interact with a client that needs a project accomplished, and then you add it to your resume as a bragging point of a client project accomplished on your own time. It also demonstrates initiative, that you took initiative to gain this experience that they would also be able to get if you were able to do a full-time internship.
Awesome. So we'll keep going, only a little bit of time left here. So Britt had a great question. So Britt, thank you for your military service. We appreciate you and that you're here with us finishing your degree. Britt had a great question of how do you explain gaps in resumes or work gaps? So if you've had time off, raised family, you're going back to school, anyone have any suggestions for explaining gaps in resumes?
My recommendation is to definitely mention or tell the story in your cover letter as to why you took the employment gap. And then on your resume, put that you had an employment gap, but what were you doing in that gap? So if you were going to school, put that you were a full-time student. If you were taking care of someone who was not feeling well, be sure to include that in that information as well. Were you volunteering? Were you doing things in the community? Were you learning a new skill and obtain a new certification? So those are just a couple tips of addressing that.
Yep, Jen, that's a great point. I would build on that and say, you don't need to share tons of detail about that. You can just say, I was taking care of a family situation that required 100% of my focus, but I'm now ready to re-enter the labor market and the labor force.
And for the stay-at-home moms, there are a lot of transferable skills that can apply to any job. So were you handling finances? Were you scheduling appointments? So be sure to include those skills as well, because it does apply for stay-at-home moms as well too, or parents.
Patrice has a great question of how do I successfully build a strong business foundation? if wanting to, become an entrepreneur, start your own business. So I would say, honestly, starting your own business, that's not something you need a degree for, right? But looking at what degree could help support you and maybe fill the gaps in your business knowledge. So for example, if you've been working in catering, you understand the business, you understand how it works, the operations, right? But maybe you need some of the HR or the leadership side or the finance to really understand the bookings and the back end. So maybe that's what you focus on now to help build that, to give you a stronger foundation for you to start your business moving forward.
The Small Business Association sometimes has retirees as mentors. And these are folks that have tons of knowledge in their brain, have been successful entrepreneurs and business leaders, and really look forward to sharing that information to an audience that needs it. So I think that could be a perfect match if you explore Small Business Association or possibly even the Chamber of Commerce networking breakfast. I would go there, and you never know who's sitting next to you. I actually attended a Make-A-Wish event. Sitting to the right of me was a lawyer who helped me start my small business on a side business. And to the left of me was an accountant that I ended up using to establish my LLC. So there's a breadth of talent sitting around you, and you would never know until you actually went to an event. So I encourage you to reach out through the Chamber of Commerce, Small Business Administration for other resources of people that are happy to help. We were all rookies one day.
We'll wrap up the session here. Thanks so much, everybody, for the questions and all the positive energy and knowledge being shared in the chat. It was really good to hear from everybody. Thanks so much to our presenters, Kathy, Briar, Jen, and Emma. That's it, right? Yeah, just the four. Don't want to miss anybody out. So please click, I just shared it in the chat, click the Career Day link in the chat to explore the rest of the sessions being offered today. We actually have 2 coming up at 12 Eastern time, and you'll see what they are at that link. And then there's